Hello, my name's Peter Travis from flo-joe, and this is the fourth in our series of 4 lessons looking at the formal letter that appears in the CAE Writing paper. In lesson 1 we looked at identifying key content in the task. This is key content you need to include in your answer. In lesson 2 we looked at organising formal letters, and in the previous lesson we looked at using formal language. Now today we're going to practice proofreading. We're going to use a question or a task that appeared in lesson 1, which is a letter of application. Now if you haven't done lesson 1, we spent a few minutes looking at the task and trying to identify what the key content is in this task, the key information we need to respond to in our letter. Now if you haven't done this and you think you would benefit from that exercise, go back to video 1 and work your way through the lesson. Alternatively, just pause the video now and try to identify what you think is the key information. Okay, so if you remember, this was the key information we decided needed to be included or referred to in our letter. Now in a minute we'll look at a piece of student's work and we'll try to decide whether or not this key information has been referred to in their answer. Now often when you're asked to proofread a piece of work, you do so from the point of view of language. You proofread it to check for grammar mistakes or vocabulary mistakes, and we're going to do that today as well in this lesson. But we're also going to proofread it in the context of the CAE exam. Now the examiner will use these 4 criteria to assess your work: content, organisation, language and communicative achievement. Now we'll try to assess this piece of work that we'll read in terms of these 4 criteria, and I'll explain in a little bit more detail what these criteria mean. Okay, so here we have the student's answer to this question. I'll read it through with you. I'm writing with reference to your advertisement in the current copy of The Caterer. I would like to apply for the post of junior chef and believe I reach all the requirements you are looking for. Having finished my vocational training in hospitality and catering 2 years ago, I began my work experience in a local 3-star restaurant. This establishment served French cuisine, and during my time there I was able to develop in my butchery and fish preparation skills to an advanced level. I eventually moved on to the diner, my current employer, where I have been given the opportunity to better these skills further. In addition, I have recently been offered the chance to work with the head chef on the lunchtime menu, and as a result have gained valuable skills in calculating prices and getting local grown ingredients. During these past 2 years, I feel I learnt that I am cool under pressure, well organised and a good team player. I'm always keen to take new responsibilities and am prepared to use initiative when necessary. Additionally, I am fluent in French, English and Spanish, and I feel I would be a useful addition to your restaurant located in the tourist area of our town. Both my previous employers would be pleased to supply a reference should you need them. Their details plus my qualifications and work experience are outlined in the enclosed CV. I am available for interview at any time, but would appreciate if I could be given 1 week's notice. I hope my application will be taken in consideration, and I am looking forward to hearing from you. Yours sincerely. Now, before we continue, if you'd like to spend a little bit more time looking at the letter, pause the video now and read through it again at your own speed, and then start the video again. Okay, content. This is the first of the assessment criteria we're going to look at. Now what does it mean? What does the examiner look for when he or she is assessing your work for content? Well, essentially, they're looking for 2 things. First of all, They want to know that all the content that you've included in your letter is relevant. That means you haven't included anything in the letter that shouldn't be there, that is irrelevant. And secondly, the examiner will want to know that the reader is fully informed. That means the reader would have all the information they need from your letter in order to make an informed decision. So, on that basis, what do we think? Is this letter good in terms of content? Well, yes, I'd say this is a very good answer. The writer has acknowledged the fact that they saw the advertisement in the local paper. They've told the reader which post it is they want to apply for, because if we remember there were 3 posts. So they've told the reader which post it is they're interested in. They've given the reader a clear outline of their skills, of their experience, the fact that they've got a qualification, presumably. I say presumably, they didn't say whether they were qualified, but we can assume that they are. So this second paragraph gives us lots of information about their experience and skills. The next paragraph gives us a good idea of the person's personal qualities. Finally, the person has included a third paragraph which deals with the issue of supplying a reference, about the enclosed CV, and also their availability for interview. And they finish with a nice closing comment. So in terms of content, I think this would receive a good mark from the examiner. Now, what about organisation? Well, as we saw in the second lesson in this video series, organisation really refers to 4 different things. First of all, we have the use of paragraphs, whether the writer has organised their work into clear and logical paragraphs. Then organisation also refers to features within and between paragraphs, basic linking words that signpost our points, and discourse markers which are more advanced linking words. Then finally, there are more subtle cohesive devices such as using pronouns this or that to refer back to something mentioned earlier, relative clauses, and substitution. This is where we use a synonym, for example, to link back to a previous point. So how well has the writer done in terms of organisation? Well, again, this is a well-organised formal letter. As we can see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 distinct paragraphs. Each one deals with a specific issue. The first one is a lovely introduction, explaining where they've seen the advertisement and which position it is they're interested in applying for. The second paragraph deals with their skills, their experience, their qualifications. The third one looks at their personal qualities. And the fourth paragraph, supplementary information, as we saw earlier, dealing with their CV, the issue of references, and their availability for interview. And then the final paragraph is a nice closing comment. So in terms of paragraphing, this is a very good piece of work. Now, what about organisation within and between paragraphs? Well, if we look at the second paragraph, we can see the following, where it says, I began my work experience in a local 3-star restaurant. The writer uses substitution to refer back to this restaurant with the words, this establishment. Then later in the same sentence we see during my time there, which is another way to refer back to this period. Then a little further in the paragraph we see the use of a relative clause, beginning where I've been given the opportunity. This structure links the ideas of moving to a new restaurant with the work the person did in the restaurant. Simple linking words are used effectively as well, like in addition and as a result. And if we look at the second paragraph, we can see how the writer manages to link this new topic with the previous paragraph by writing during these past 2 years. And finally, in the penultimate paragraph, the writer uses a pronoun in their details. This refers to the 2 employers previously mentioned. So all in all, I think in terms of organisation, this is a well-structured piece of work. It's easy for us to follow, points are very logically ordered, and it's a very clear piece of writing altogether. Okay, so we'll now turn our attention to language. Now we'll do this slightly differently. What I'd like you to do is read through the letter on your own and try to identify any mistakes in grammar or vocabulary. I've used 6 codes to help you identify mistakes. If I go through them quickly, there's an upward looking arrow. If you see that in the text anywhere, and I'll try to find one for you to show you what I mean. Here we go. And am prepared to use initiative. So you can see just before initiative, I've put a bracket with this upward arrow. This suggests there's a word missing. Okay? Then R for register. This basically means that the person has written something, perhaps using the wrong level of formality. If you see T for tip, the person hasn't made a mistake as such, but there's a better way of expressing this particular point. Okay, so that's T. If you see WF, that means the person has used the correct word, but in the wrong form. So maybe they've put a verb rather than a noun, or the negative as opposed to a positive, so the wrong form. If you see WT, it means wrong tense. And if you see WW, it's the wrong word. So if you look through the letter now, I will scroll the screen very slowly to give you time to read it and see what you think. Okay, so let's work through this together. So the first thing that we've underlined is copy, the current copy of the caterer. This is an issue of collocation. The word we use with current in terms of a newspaper or a magazine is edition, so the current edition of the caterer. Now reach, again, is another issue of collocation. In terms of this phrase, all the requirements you are looking for, we would use the word fulfill. So I fulfill all the requirements you're looking for. If we go further down, the person writes, I was able to develop in my butchery and fish preparation skills. Well, we don't use in after develop here. The writer has said here, where I have been given the opportunity to better these skills further. Another word for better is improve or hone, which is a good word. Now, towards the end of this paragraph, we've got getting local grown ingredients. Getting isn't wrong, but a much better, much more advanced word, and another collocation here is sourcing. And we also say locally produced. So it should be calculating prices and sourcing locally produced ingredients. Now in the next paragraph, the writer states, during these past 2 years I feel I learnt. Well, we're talking about unfinished time here because the person has written during these past 2 years. So this is the wrong tense, and of course should be I have learnt. We have here, I am always keen to take new responsibilities. We would probably have to say here take on. And am prepared to use, best here, my initiative. I'm prepared to use my initiative. Finally, in this paragraph, in the space of one sentence, the writer has used addition or additionally twice. So we're looking for a different word here. We're looking for a synonym. Now I would say a really good word to use here is asset. So I would be a useful asset. In this penultimate paragraph, plus I've used the code T, which suggests this isn't wrong, but I think along with would sound better here. So their details along with my qualifications. And finally, we have a missing word here. After appreciate, we would say it. So I am available for interview at any time, but would appreciate it if I could be given 1 week's notice. And finally, in the last paragraph, I hope my application will be taken, we'd say, into consideration. And I am looking forward to, we have R for register here. We're saying that this is slightly informal for this letter, and it would be better to say, I look forward to. So, most of the mistakes in this letter are down to vocabulary, really. I think the grammar, the sentence structure, is of a very good level indeed. Most of the mistakes here are down to the incorrect choice of vocabulary, but generally this is a good piece of written work. Now finally we have communicative achievement. Now what does this cover? Has the writer created the correct format? Have they written in a way that suggests this is a formal letter and not an essay, for example, or a report? So have they got it laid out correctly? Have they written with the correct level of formality, bearing in mind the context? What would the effect on the reader be of reading this letter? Would it be a positive experience? And finally, does the reader communicate ideas clearly? Not just straightforward ideas, but some perhaps more complicated ideas. Now again, I think this letter would score well in terms of communicative achievement. In terms of format, the text has all the features of a formal letter you'd expect. It's structured correctly, the language used is appropriate, the way the reader is addressed at the beginning and the end, all this points to a well-formatted formal letter. The level of formality is spot on as well. Apart from that one small point at the end of the letter, looking forward to, the entire text is written in an appropriately formal tone. For both these reasons, the letter would have a very positive effect on the reader. It's clear, concise, and at no time does the reader have to work hard to interpret or understand what the writer means. The writer expresses straightforward and more complicated ideas very clearly. So all in all, this is a very good example of a formal letter. Now that's the end of this lesson. If you'd like access to the archive of writing tasks that appear on the flo-joe website, as well as model answers for each one, find out more about CAE Exam Success Plus. And if you're working on your own and feel you'd benefit from getting feedback on your writing, go to the address below to find out more about our CAE Critique and Correction Service.